The government undertook to buy all the milk a dairy farmer could not sell on the open market. Today, that one program costs the federal government between $1 billion and $2 billion a year. At one time, the government owned 18 billion pounds, billion with a B, of surplus milk, butter, and cheese. When it became apparent that this particular price support program had gotten out of hand, someone came up with a bright idea. Let's kill the cows. Kill the cows? What better way to cut back on milk production? Shake you up? Sure shook us up. Just think about it. Here you have the world's friendliest, most placid assembly line workers. Bessies and Flossies and Elsies, with 2 tags on each ear and a calm determination to eat as much as possible and, in their ungulate digestive systems, turn grass and fodder into milk. Milk, that stuff your mother told you to drink lots of if you wanted to be big and strong. It was shocking at the time, but people understood why, during the Great Depression, farmers dumped their milk rather than sell it at prices too low to feed the cows or themselves. Even back then, they knew the value of a photo opportunity. So the government reacted and started to buy all the leftover milk. It kept the farmers and the cows in business. But knowing that the government would buy all the milk they couldn't sell, Bessie and Flossie and Elsie and their owners began flooding the country with milk. As we said, by the mid-1980s, the government owned 18 billion pounds of surplus dairy products, with the storage costs alone running into the billions of dollars. For David Stockman, who was President Reagan's original budget director, the dairy program was and is a disgrace.
To me, that program, $1 billion or $2 billion a year, is probably the single most worthless, lacking in merit program in the entire federal budget. We will have an adequate supply of milk, whether we subsidize farmers or not.
Stockman wanted to kill the entire dairy program. He lost that fight, and after he left the White House, Congress came up with what he and a lot of others think is a ridiculous plan. Mr. Dairy Farmer, tell us what you earn per year, and we'll pay 5 years of income in cash if you will agree to get out and stay out of the dairy business for those 5 years. Farmers also had to promise to sell the cows for slaughter. The 1.2 million cows selected would be branded, killed, permanently removed from production. Farmers could keep the money they got from the slaughterhouse in addition to the government payment. Who were the farmers who joined the program? Some were less than successful and jumped at the chance to get out of debt. Others were productive dairymen who saw a chance at a kind of sabbatical, the thing most farmers never get. Art Van Hollen of Jerome County, Idaho, is one of those.
Those cows that dominated our life for nearly 24 years, something like that. And our youngest daughter was going off to college. I told my wife, it's time for a break. We can stop for a while and go and see somehow the other people live, you know. We had about 180 head altogether at that time.
It's a matter of public record what the government paid you. Can you tell us?
The government payment was $391,000, I think.
And then, in addition, you sold the
cows,
cattle
yes.
for hamburger, I guess.
Yes, they all went to slaughter.
Down the road a piece from Art Van Hollen's place is the Magic Valley Dairy, which less than 2 years ago was milking 4,000 cows. Mark Pepperzak managed the dairy for the owners before the government bought them out. The government paid them, or will pay them around $10 million. Plus, they also sold 4,000 cows on the market. Do you know how much they got?
I think they got approximately $2 million for those 4,000 cows.
So you were taking 4,000 milk-giving, productive, happy bossies out of the business.
Absolutely.
With the government shelling out all that money, the cow slaughter program had no trouble meeting its goal to reduce the number of cows by 12%. But the program had a hole in the fence, a hole so big you could drive a cow through it. It was this. No one told the farmers who stayed in the dairy business that they had to hold back. They could buy more cows, they could increase production. After all, the government was still buying all that milk, every quart of it, that they could produce, at a slightly lower, but still pretty good price for all that white gold.
Well, as soon as the buyout program started, there were numerous dairies in the valley here that were trying to expand, add more cows to their herd.
Mitch Lowe is the manager of the First Interstate Bank branch in Jerome County, where 7,000 of 11,000 dairy cows were slaughtered in the program. Well, the government is encouraging dairymen to get out of the business and sell their cattle for slaughter. Other dairymen are coming into you to borrow money to buy new cattle.
We had a herd that had 80 animals increased to 112. There was a herd that went from 350 to 950 animals. That's a 271% increase.
Are there new dairies?
I would guess that there's at least half a dozen to 8 brand new dairies being built from the scratch, and most of these are going to be larger dairies, 600 to 1,200 head.
It should have come as no surprise that in this county, which considers itself the dairy capital of the nation, the 7,000 cows that went to slaughter have all been replaced by cows bought by dairymen who stayed in the business. This dairy now milks 800 cows. They milk 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. And every day it takes 2 tankers to haul away the output of this herd. And the owner is adding a complete new dairy. On still another dairy farm, Jim and Patty Wiersma decided not to slaughter their cattle. In fact, they are negotiating with their banker for a loan to possibly double the size of their herd. As it stands now, if you wanted to double the size of your herd, the government would buy for some kind of a price all the milk you produce. But I mean,
As long as the co-op will take the milk, you can double up, yes.
At the moment, the government is committed to a certain price for all the milk anybody wants to produce in the United States.
That's right.
And when you subtract all the dead cows and add the increased production, what do you get? You get an estimate from the Department of Agriculture that in 1988, more milk will be produced than in any other year in history. Now, what about those dead cows? They weren't just buried, you know. They were turned into hamburger and other less choice cuts, more than 800 million pounds of it. Enough to cause outrage among the cattlemen, the beef producers, afraid their prices would collapse under the weight of all that meat. So to keep those cattlemen happy, the Congress and the White House decided the government should reach into another pocket and buy 400 million pounds of that meat and ship half of that overseas as food for servicemen.
I think it's a terrible idea. Using this low-quality meat, shipping it halfway around the world is the new equivalent of the $600 toilet seat. It's absurd. They ought to be buying in local markets at the cheapest price they can get.
So here we are. Hundreds of millions of pounds of hamburger have been eaten, and beef prices are as high as they've ever been. Dairy herds are bigger than ever, and the government continues to buy all the milk farmers can't sell. Who is the main sponsor of the legislation which caused this? California Democratic Congressman Tony Coelho, and he thinks it worked.
Oh, yes, it's been very successful.
How would you call it successful?
The cost to the taxpayer has been reduced by over $1 billion. You've saved a lot of family farms. You've reduced the amount of milk and dairy products the federal government has to buy. You've now had the price of red meat, both in cattle and pork, increased. What more do you want out of legislation?
Well, Congressman Coelho may be a bit selective about his statistics. The cost of government milk purchases and the cost of warehousing the surplus did fall for a time. Add a price of $1.5 billion to kill the cows. But those surpluses are climbing again. As far as you can see, it hasn't done what it was supposed to do in Idaho.
Hasn't done it in any of the states. California's shipping way more now than they did before also.
They're up 6%.
Well, it certainly didn't fix the problem, but I think on a temporary basis it did reduce the surplus. Obviously, production is now increasing again and surpluses appear to be coming back.
There probably isn't a more efficient bunch of people in the world than what the American dairymen are. They all, like you say, they always find a way.
David Stockman thinks the government should get out of the dairy business lock, stock, and barrel, but that it may be too late to stop buying up all that milk.
It's been here 50 years. Both parties are committed to it. The most anti-spending president in history ducked a chance to veto it, kill it. So I think it is a permanent fixture of our economic constitution, whether it makes any sense or not. And the taxpayers of this country, whether they like it or not, are probably going to be paying the bill for decades.
And if that doesn't bother you, the group set up to find solutions to the milk dilemma now recommends that if dairy surpluses continue to increase, the government should consider, among other things, killing more.